Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we're continuing with the 70 kochos of the self in accordance with the teachings of the Vilna Gaon Zchus Yogan Aleinu. And today we're speaking about the third koyach, which is the Tzura Rishona. So after speaking about the He'eder Koidem HaHavaya, which is the complete absence of graspability of anything in the self, then we came to the Hiyuli, which was the emergence of the possibility of grasping something, even though it was prior to any somethingness that was capable of being grasped. Now we come to the Tzura Rishona, which is the beginning of grasp. Tzura is a form. It's the formation that takes the raw material of experience, existence, or everything, and allows it to emerge through a particular formulation and process of formation so that it can take on a particular form. A form is the abstract shape in which something, some aspect of self or existence is now going to be grasped, understood, and engaged with. A tzura is prior to definition of something. A tsura is prior to identifying the particulars or the chomer of something, as the Maharal makes so clear. That definition, expression, graspability, that's already the realm of the chomer. That's physical matter. But what allows physical matter, what allows chaos or randomness in the self, in existence, to take on meaningfulness is the tsura. The tsura is the form that is applied to something, the sense of meaningful boundaries and gradations that take this particular patch of expression and allow it to become something intelligible, allows it to become something graspable and transformable by way of information into a shift in my experience. In the He'eder Koidem Havaya, in that first koyach of absence, complete nothingness, the tzimtzum of the self, which is, yes, a presence of nothingness, but nonetheless it's still nothingness, then the entrance into the Hiyuli, which is the emergence of possibility of the self expressing itself, but prior to any actualization, the Tzura Rishona is the first instantiation, the congealment of the initial form that the self is going to take. Now, obviously, nothing is sedimented, nothing is stuck in this definitive process that will never be let go of or never be shifted away from. We're not talking about any metaphysical definition of the self here. We're talking about the ways in which we view process of self, the way that the self processes itself through the experience of reality. And the Tzura Rishona is that instantiation, that emergence of subjectivity and consciousness, which happens at the beginning of our birth and happens at the beginning of each and every day, and it happens again at the beginning of each and every moment, and it happens again each and every time that we begin to start again after we feel that we've lost sight of this Tzura Rishona. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is called the Yoitzer. He's the one who creates the ultimate formation. Ein Sayer Ke'elikenu. There's a formulation of all of the energy and the matter of existence that now takes on a certain meaningfulness. It's the Chachma Shebechol Davar. That's the Tzura. And as well for the individual, our job is to mimic HaKadosh Baruch Hu on a certain level, and therefore we have to become the formulation of the significance of our experience. The Tzura Rishona is that shape that will carry itself throughout all future experiences. The Tzura Rishona is the way that I see myself. It's the emergence of a framework of my personality prior to any definition on any aspect of what my experience is going to be. In fact, the Tzura Rishona is the beginning of a form, but it continues to be formless. It does not take on any practical definition yet, but it's rather the part of us that will consistently carry itself through all experience, ready to take on the definition of ourselves in that moment. The tsura is that which is ready to receive the information that allows, that informs myself so that I can form a particular formulation through which I look at the world. Those are the formulas of the self. And this tsura rishona is ever shifting because it's undefined. It's the secret of poishet tsura velovesh tsura, that a person has to perpetually be at the ready to undress themselves of their original tsura and to redress themselves in a new tsura, to be able to shift, to be able to move, to be fluid, because the secret of the fluidity of the self and the infinite applicability of the self and refinement of the self in accordance with whatever the circumstances of the moment might be, the flexibility of the self, the secret of Yaakov Avinu, which doesn't have any particular defined expression. That flexibility comes from the awareness that there's a singular tsura, there's a form that will always be there for me prior to and after any definition of experience. And therefore, the definition of my experience in the moment itself is what is going to always be informed upon the tsura, that the expansivity of the tsura, the original tsura, the Ein Sayer Ke'elikenu, that nefesh Elokai Mimal Mamish, informs us that every moment that I experience, I will always find myself. And I have to be poishet tsura veloivich tsura, the ability to change. Chassidus defines this as the experience of Ratzav v'shoiv. Ratzav v'shoiv in the Lashon of the Magid is described as the experience of Poshet Surah Velovesh Surah. What the Baal Sulam said he's doing every time he goes to the mikveh. He's just taking himself off and putting himself back on. That's the secret of being able to reorient ourselves and pick ourselves up again each and every moment with the ability to reflect now in a new way upon the new information that has come to light in experience. The ability to reform and reform and reform and recreate the original form through which all of my experience is going to be reflected. This capacity to be Poshet Surah Velovesh Surah is the secret of Ratzav V'Shov. It's also on a higher level the secret of Mati V'Loi Mati, touching and not touching. The Hasidim and the Hasidus describes that these are two stages of the inability to be sedimented in any one particular way or shape or form, but rather the necessity and the flexibility of the soul, which has the capacity of expressing itself across all expressions of possibility. That's the secret of the Tzura Rishona, and it's only because that Tzura Rishona is rooted above in the Sire of Metzias, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in Sire Ke'elikeinu, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the ultimate form that gives us the capacity, the gift to create the frameworks and the formulations and the tzuros through which we want to perceive reality. But this flexibility can express itself in one or two ways. There's the Ratzav V'Shov, meaning I have to run and I have to return. I have to move forward with myself. My tzura has to be oriented towards engagement with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and clarity and goodness and all of its manifestations. And then I have to retreat into myself again and lose that original tzura. And now I have to return back to a place of balance and not necessarily being engaged with meaningfulness. And I have to let myself rest. And it becomes a symptom of existence, a symptom of being human being, that I can't be in one tzura all the time. And therefore I have to take on my tzura, take off my tzura and shift it. But in a deeper way, there's a secret of Mati V'Loi Mati, which teaches us that this need to perpetually be shifting ourselves, as much as it looks like it's symptomatic of this exhaustion that drives Ratzav V'Shov, the need to stop running and return to ourselves, ultimately it's really rooted in the way that we actually can grasp existence. The ontology of the self is the secret of Mati V'Loi Mati, that even if we were doing our best, we would still have to perpetually shift. The Tsura is the flexibility of the self that has the capacity of being found wherever it's found, because wherever it is going to be in accordance with its formation of itself. The self is infinitely capable of drawing down the meaningfulness that we choose to view our lives with. Torah and mitzvahs, amuna, bitachon, simcha, shalva, menuchas nefesh, mesiras nefesh, amuna, all of it, and to apply that kernel of the Tzura Rishona in any given situation. That is the flexibility of Yaakov Avinu, that ability to apply oneself with no particular or defined expression of self, but rather the definition of self is that it's undefinable, and therefore it can find expression and definition in any situation. There is no situation in which a person cannot find themselves. And im anikan hakolkan, if my consciousness is here, if my selfhood is here, if the emergence of self is here, then it's specifically here that I'm going to be able to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu in my Tzura Rishona. And it's the flexibility of that Tzura that enables a processing of life through the doubled nature of running and returning and changing and the perpetual shifts in consciousness. The only way to grab hold of a center of connectivity and cohesiveness is to understand that at the core of all things is the Tzura Rishona. There's an original form which I will always remain true to because it's the truest thing. It's so true that it can't become false because it exists. It's who I am. And in that way, we're able to draw upon the koyach of the Hiyuli, which is the Hashem Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed, when we're able to draw down that moyach of Chachma, of Hashem Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed, and allow it to become the Tzura Rishona of ourselves, and every aspect of ourselves is going to be revealing the desire to connect back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to use our tzura and to be mitzayer ourselves and to create the images of a world that is refined and to live in Gan Eden even prior to our actual arrival there, which is the very thing that draws down that arrival. The tzura of our mind informs the tzura of Metzias, as the Vitebsker taught us, that in my room, Mashiach is already here, because that tzura of the Vitebsker, as he's sitting in Tiveria with the Sefer open, is a tzura that informs the very fabric of the tzura of reality. And outside the tzura of Tiveria, without being infused with the light of the Rav Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk, is the other tzura. But a person's mind has the ability of drawing down redemption itself, and the secret of Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben Yosef, and the das of Moshe that connects the two of them, Be'ezras Hashem.